thanks everybody for joining me on this webinar. As Lisa mentioned, we're going to talk about membership plans and how they can help boost your practice performance and also provide better care for your patients. So before I jump into the content, I just want to give you a quick background on myself. It's always good to understand where somebody's coming from. So basically, I started my career, I'm actually an engineer. I started my career at Northrop Grumman. We actually work on avionics design and flight controls for fighter aircraft, including drones. This is back in the early 90s. From there, I moved over and worked for Microsoft, and not in the coding side, but actually on the business side, and ran a few of their businesses. I learned a ton there. It was actually during the crazy days of Microsoft in the early 2000s to mid 2000s, and then I actually went off on my own and became CEO of a company called FitLinks, and we did wearable devices. And you see a few of those down at the bottom there. We actually wired up Michael Johnson during the Olympic trials and saw how his body was functioning, which was pretty crazy. He had an incredible machine for a body. And then we started doing things like wearable devices for more general consumer usage. And one of the things we did was Nike Plus products. If you've ever seen those, they track your runs in your shoe and they communicate with your phone. And at one point with iPods, I'm not sure if they exist anymore. And then we started doing wearables for healthcare and fitness. And we ended up selling the company to a medical diagnostics company, device company, who currently is using our product in the medical side. But one thing that sort of ran true for me through all those experiences is sort of my passions for different things. And if I had to describe myself, one is I love technology if it has a purpose. So technology for technology's sake isn't a lot of fun to me, but can you actually apply it to things and solve problems? And one of the areas I like to apply that sort of technology to and with the purposes around consumer access to healthcare. So as I was talking about those wearable devices, we actually would sell those devices to hospitals and healthcare systems and wellness providers who would then embed it inside their solution. So you have a full range solution coming from the healthcare provider with our devices sort of embedded inside those programs. And so it would help somebody with diabetes or somebody with congestive heart failure, improve their health, all the way up to the spectrum of somebody who was a top athlete. But I love the idea of, helping people monitor their health and get information to improve their health. I do have a deep disdain for middlemen. I just don't think there's any need for them in our world. And you see that happening, across lots of different markets. I think the dental market is a little bit of a laggard there, but I'll get into that and sort of show where I think we can sort of start to make some ground there and just start to get rid of middlemen or between your practice and your patients. There's really no reason to have anybody in between you and your patients. And then I love partnerships as well. And I described some of that earlier with some of the things we've done with FitLinks and, helping healthcare systems, apply their abilities with using our devices to improve people's health. And I feel the exact same way about the dental space is we're trying to apply some technology that helps you and your practice both improve your performance and also improve your patient's access to care. So how did I get here? Why am I now CEO of a company called Claire? I ended up selling that company. I actually ran into a friend. He owned 6 dental practices, and it's a small group practice. And after talking to him for a little while, I spent a few weeks with him. Just I got really curious about the market once he started telling me things like most people don't go to the dentist, and all these stats that you probably already know about half the people don't go to the dentist in a given year. Obviously, reimbursements were difficult from insurance companies. And just sort of a litany of things. And it made no sense to me. I grew up in a world where I went to and got dental care twice a year. I just thought everybody did, but obviously it was not true. I also, like a lot of people, thought dentists made just a ton of money and we're sort of raking it in. And he described to me the difficulties and the barriers to that happening. So the net is I decided to spend another year researching the market. This was back in 2016. And what I'm going to show here in the next, probably 3/4 of this presentation is what we learned during that market research. So I actually hired a couple third parties, market research firms. They did one-on-one interviews with dentists and patients. They did focus groups and they did national surveys. And what we're trying to understand is sort of what's happening in the market and how can we help. And so there's a quick agenda. We don't need to go through it. We're going to walk through this as we go along. So the first thing we saw in our research was what I call the reimbursement crisis. And you probably heard about some of these things. I'm not sure, a lot of people haven't actually seen the data, so we actually pulled the data out to really give you a feel for what's going on. So between, over about the course of about 20 years, from 1997 all the way almost to, current, 1990 all the way up to current, basically expenditures on the market, the dental market side, total dental market grew by about 70%. So that's just saying services and products, across the dental market grew 70% between 1997 and 2015. At the same time, though, you can see the bottom graph is showing that general dentists and general practices, basically earnings remained flat over that same period of time. And obviously that was amazing to me. I'd actually never seen that in the market, where the market itself grew pretty robustly when the people who were driving the market and were at the front of the market, providing the care in the market, basically remained flat from an earnings perspective. So wanted to understand more. And I'm not going to, we have a lot of research and a lot of things that we've uncovered, but sort of what it all came down to was there was just this huge drain on the market called dental insurance. And I know you probably know about this as far as, you feel it probably every day. You probably don't see the totality of it, though, across the U.S. And when you take a big step back, insurers drain about $30 billion from the dental market. So they generate about $75 billion of revenue a year in premiums, but only about 60% of that gets to patient care. So that means about 30 billion of it is going somewhere else. And I get a lot of questions about where does it go? It's hard to tell. They don't have to report what they're spending money on. So the net is, it just goes, in my opinion, it sort of goes into the machine, and it ends up in all kinds of different places. But the net is, the key part is, it does not go to patient care. And so you don't see that, $30 billion. So if we could suddenly, snap our fingers and, get rid of this sort of, hassle middleman in between you and your patients, the market would grow by about 40% overnight. Now, further digging into the data, we wanted to see sort of what was happening on the reimbursement side. And what this is showing is between 2010 and 2015, the states here in purple, pink, reddish all had reimbursement declines. The only states that had a reimbursement increase between 2010 and 2015 was Alaska, Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota. And if you look at North Dakota, South Dakota, and Alaska, the increases are very small. Alaska is 0.5%, South Dakota is 0.6%, North Dakota is 5.4%, Montana had a big increase at about 28%. But the net was, it was in a very few states with very few dentists in those states. And if you added up all the dentists in the U.S., about 99% of all dentists saw a reimbursement decline in those 5 years. And this is continued, by the way, and I'll get to that in a second. But the other piece of information we wanted to understand is, that's great that they decline. We see that, but the question was, what was driving that decline? And so this is actually a study from the Journal of American Dental Association. And what they did was they took a look at the reimbursement rates relative to PPO participation. And what this is showing is by state, the red bar graph is showing the decline or decrease or increase in reimbursement rates. So you can see, all these states on the left-hand side here are to California. California had a 16.9% decline in reimbursement rates. What you also see, though, is that blue line, and that's basically showing the level of participation in PPOs in those states. So sort of a normalizing that line is that straight blue line. It's basically showing there's a direct correlation between participation within PPOs and the decline in reimbursement rates. And this was based on statistical analysis. They were correlated. It was basically a strong correlation of 77%. So it's basically saying they are correlated. So the more dentists participate in PPOs, the lower the reimbursement rate goes. And it, like I was mentioned just earlier, and it's only going to get worse. So Morgan Stanley Research reported a 6.7% decline in reimbursement rates in 2018. They projected another 8.7% decline in 2019. And, I also get a lot of questions. Well, is it going to increase at some point? I'd say no. If it hasn't happened in the last, 20 years or so, and it's continued to be projected as declining, I wouldn't expect it to turn around anytime soon. And so, obviously it's not a good situation to be in, and it's only going to get tougher. The other side of this, though, is this is the surprising part for me. So we also looked at this from a patient perspective. we wanted to understand, does insurance even work for patients? And this was a study done by the Health Policy Institute of the American Dental Association, and about a third of people who actually get dental insurance never use it. They don't go in at all during the course of the year. So they pay $500, these are typical for premiums, and none of that is used. They don't go to the dentist, you get nothing, and the only person who gets money from that is the insurer. And then even the people who pay in and then go to, and use their benefits, about 70% of them pay more in premiums than they get out. So we got a third who don't go, we get no benefit, and then the 70% of people who do go and pay actually, get less back than they put in. And then the number three was the item on this was actually the more surprising part. I mean, those two are surprising, but the third one was the procedure utilization is incredibly low. Surprisingly low when you think about it. Is like, for example, people with dental benefits, they use 0.86 pro fees a year. And how many do you buy in these plans? You buy 2. So there's amazing underutilization of what they've purchased. So it's not just on your side, it's also on the patient side where they're paying a lot more in than they're getting out. And so, based on that, we said, okay, something going on here. We need to understand, the dentist perspective, the patient perspective. We did basically sat down with patients, both insured and uninsured, and we wanted to understand sort of what's their perspective on oral care, and especially the uninsured. We really wanted to focus a little bit on the uninsured to really understand sort of how they were thinking about things. And this is what came back. So one is, you may know this already, but it's always interesting to see it over a long period of time. So if you go back all the way to 2000, our study was up until 2015 when we did this, you can see the percentage of U.S. adults with and without dental benefits. So the blue line shows adults 19 to 64 years old, and about 66% of those adults have dental insurance. So that means about a third of them don't have dental benefits. And then it becomes even more drastic when you look at older adults who are 65 plus. You can see only 33% of them have dental benefits. So that means 2 out of 3 U.S. seniors have no dental benefits. And again, this is sort of common knowledge, but they don't have them because when they retire, they lose access to dental benefits that their employer was sponsoring, and Medicare does not pick it up. So it's sort of they get lost. And the good news is they want more care, and I'll get to that in a minute. You just got to give them something that they can understand and utilize, not dental insurance. They're not looking for dental insurance. So let's take a look at the numbers on the uninsured side. So there's over 100 million people in the U.S. who are uninsured, and about 38 million of them visit a dentist each year. So about 150,000 uninsured consumers walk into a dental office every day. So it's a pretty large group. If you look on the right-hand side within this table, you can see how that breaks down by generation. And it's, obviously it's weighted towards the baby boomer and silent generation, but there's still a lot of consumers on the millennial and Gen X side who don't have dental benefits and do have an annual visit to the dentist. But then it adds up to about 38 million people across the U.S. We did, like I said, we did surveys, and what we were trying to understand is how do they think about oral care and oral health, and what's the value they place on it. And what you're seeing here is the graph shows their response to their level of agreement with different statements of, what the importance of oral health is. So 84% basically say that oral health is linked to their overall health. So, they've gotten that message, that sort of high-level message that you see out there, sort of the public service thing that oral health is important to overall health has basically, worked. People believe it, and they understand it. The second thing is 75% agree that people with healthy mouths enjoy a better quality of life. And then the third one is 60% believe people with healthy mouths live longer. So if you think about it, oral health, they tie to overall health, quality of life, and their longevity, which is an incredible, when you think about a value proposition for what you provide to your patients. So they get it. They get the value. But this is based on this, what data show here, it was based on, during our market research, we would work with practices and pull the data off the practice management system and basically analyze it. We'd look at how do insured patients work, sort of act, and how do uninsured patients act. And I'll get to a minute in membership plan patients, but we initially just want to understand insured and uninsured. And what you notice very quickly with every practice that we pull data on is the uninsured patients come in a lot less often. And it's typically 30 to 50% is sort of the rate of coming in relative to somebody with benefits. So in this example, this is actually a practice. Their uninsured patients were coming in 0.5 times a year, which means they were coming in once every 2 years. Their insured patients were coming in 1.3 times a year. And this is very typical, by the way, of what we see in practices. It can be 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, sort of like that for insured. Uninsured can be 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, but it's amazingly consistent from practice to practice. They also, because they're not coming in very often and they don't have dental benefits, they accept about half the amount of treatment. In this example, the uninsured accepted 2.5 procedures where the insured accepted 5.5. Again, very consistent. We see that over and over again. So last slide, they value oral health. This slide, but they don't get it. So what's going on? So we asked them, why don't you get treatment? You know it's valuable. Why don't you get treatment? And the net is, the two reasons are it's too expensive and I don't have insurance. And again, amazingly consistent. We did the study. There's other parties that have done the same study and gotten almost exactly the same answer. It's right around the 70% area. We dug deeper on this, though. We would then ask these patients, okay, explain to us what too expensive is. And the responses were really eye-opening. So we would ask them, how much does a filling cost? How much does a prophy cost? How much, and so on and so forth. And their answers were 2 to 4 times higher than what the actual cost was. And so the one thing is they don't know how much things cost. And you probably won't be surprised by that because it's hard to get information about dental care out there as a consumer. And what they did in that case was they marked it up a lot in their heads. And so it became a point of a thing where they would sort of assume pricing. And then once we told them what the actual pricing was, they were surprised that it was as affordable as it was. And so what it really became was it's not really it's too expensive. That really wasn't the issue. The issue was I think it's too expensive. And there are big differences between those two. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about a membership plan, and as part of that, being transparent about pricing is most of the times the patient's going to react in a positive way versus in a negative way, because right now they're probably guessing much higher than it actually is. So we tried to sort of summarize what we're hearing from patients, uninsured patients, and how they feel about things. And this is sort of a net of all that. And that picture actually is a pretty good representation of what we heard. So they're worried about the cost of care. They're stressed when they're in your office. They really don't like that they don't have coverage. It just makes them feel uncomfortable. And they also think they're paying too much, even though they don't know what they should be paying. They're not going to negotiate pricing. They're very uncomfortable with that because this is healthcare. And so the net of all that is they feel exposed. And so I always like to put it in terms of you might have been exposed to at some point. So this is basically your patient when they walk into your office. Your uninsured patient. If you've ever been here, something's been diagnosed in your car. It's probably a part you never heard of. You have no idea how much it costs. You don't know if you should get it fixed now or if you can wait. And so you have one of two outcomes that come from this experience. One outcome is you decide to do it and you pay whatever the mechanic's asking you to pay. You got something fixed, you don't even know if it was needed or not or how much it cost. And what's the outcome of that? You feel bad. You feel like you probably paid too much. You feel like you sort of got ripped off, but you have no idea. You're just assuming it because you feel sort of exposed. And then the other option is you decide not to do it and you say, no, thank you. I'll go, my way. I don't think I really need that. And as you're driving out, you're like, is my car going to break down? Again, two, not optimal outcomes. And the reason is you don't really know, right? You're exposed. You don't really know what the right answer is. And you're really not getting any help at the end of the day from the mechanic. So just put yourself in that position as you think about your uninsured patients who are sitting in your chair. Here's the really good news from our research is that the patients, these uninsured patients, want dental coverage. And this is based on a national survey that we did. And so 89%, if you add up the extremely interested, the very interested, moderately interested, and slightly interested, that all adds up to 89% of uninsured consumers are interested in a dental care plan. In my opinion, more important than that is the extremely interested and the very interested is 48%. So almost 50% of uninsured patients are either extremely or very interested in dental care coverage, but there's a huge caveat. They don't want insurance. They've looked at insurance. They know it's complicated. And in their words, I know the insurance company is going to get me. They use that word a number of times. They're going to get me. There's going to be something in the fine print, something I don't understand. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to use it in the way, I'm going to pay more into it than I get out. And so what they asked for was simple, transparent, and affordable. Simple and transparent, very easy to sort of understand. Maybe I'll just talk on transparent for a second, because we did used to get, in the very beginning when we started Clear, we used to get pushback on the transparency side, because a lot of dentists don't want to expose their pricing. The key here, though, is it's going to actually make the patient feel better about it, because typically the pricing is lower than what they were expecting. It also builds trust, that you're willing to be authentic with them, you're willing to be transparent with them, and that goes a long way to the patient trusting you. That's probably the more important part. And then lastly, affordable. So some people look at that and say affordable means, cheap, and it actually doesn't. So that they were expecting, when we asked them, what would you expect to pay for, things that, a typical thing where you get 2 cleanings, 2 exams, x-rays, and discounts off of the treatment, their typical answer was $40 to $50 a month. Now, I wouldn't price it that way, but if you're able to fit with, underneath that, basically they're going to look at it as affordable. So affordable does not have to mean cheap. So from all this research, what we came up with, and we actually tested the concept. So we draw concepts together, we put them in front of consumers, we also put them in front of dentists who gave us feedback. What we learned was what we call a membership plan is sort of the answer to a lot of this, both the reimbursement crisis and the issues you have with insurance, and the answer to what patients are asking for, which is simple, affordable, transparent care. So before I go into sort of more details on membership plan, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page for what a membership plan is. So basically, it's a dental care plan that you offer directly to your patients, and then your patients just pay you a monthly or annual subscription for preventative care and then discounts off other treatment. And I think in the next slide I have an example of one where I'll get into the details of what a plan might look like. The key part of this, though, is that you have 100% control over the design of that plan, the pricing of that plan, what treatment's included, what treatment is not. You also have direct relationship with your patient, where the two of you make decisions on care. But you're in control, and that's obviously critically important. And then it basically is a win-win. So you are obviously in control. You're setting pricing. You're deciding the treatment protocol. You're getting rid of a lot of hassles from your side. And then what the patient gets is exactly what I just described they asked for, which is simple, comprehensive, affordable, transparent care that basically enables them to better manage their oral health. And so it's sort of what you would call a win-win. Before you decide you want to move forward with the membership plan, the one thing I just want to make sure you do is think about this not as just a transaction. Think about this as a relationship with your patient. And I'd just like to give these examples, Nordstrom, Prime, Marriott Rewards, whichever ones you have in your portfolio of memberships. Just think about what that does for you and what behavior it creates and how you think about that brand. And the one I always sort of highlight is Prime. So I do a lot of projects over the weekend. My old experience prior to being a member of Prime was I'd go hunting into the stores trying to find parts I need. Typically, I'd have to move from hardware store to hardware store, and I spend sometimes hours finding the parts I need in order to do the job. And I'd waste hours of one day I'd have on the weekend to do the work. With Prime, I can find the part easily. It's amazingly fast to find the part. And then I have it shipped to my house, and it's sitting on my doorstep on Thursday or Friday. On Saturday, I'm off and running. It's made a major impact on my ability to get things done on the weekend. And there's a lot of people married to Prime in that I almost buy everything I need through Prime. Think about it the same way your membership plan. This is about building a relationship with your patient, not just about a transaction. And it's about a way of getting them to be loyal to your practice, trust your practice, accept more treatment and things like that. And obviously it's got to be more than just dollars and cents to get that. So here's an example of a membership plan. What I've seen in my experience is most practices will offer 3 plans. I've seen practices go up to 5 plans, and it's all based on demographics of your practice and obviously your philosophy around treatment protocol. But I'll just give this example. Typically, we'll see a child plan, an adult plan, a perio plan. And I'll just pick the adult plan, adult complete plan shown here in the middle. In this example, it's $33 a month or $396 a year. If you compare that to a UCR, the patient's saving $115, and it includes a list of things down there: 2 professional cleanings and checkups, 10 to 25% off of other procedures, 10% subscription discount for family members. It can include all kinds of different things. The treatment protocol can be changed, the pricing can be changed, but that's sort of a typical plan. And up at the top here, you see sort of the value props to the patient. So it includes, their cleanings, exams, routine X-rays at no additional cost outside of that subscription. They get discounts on other things. The huge benefit is benefits start immediately to a patient. They don't actually a lot of times believe it. They think there's going to be some waiting period, it's a process and all that stuff. And you say, no, sign up now. You sign up in a minute or two, and you get the benefits right now. Transparency is important. And then the huge value proposition: no deductibles, no waiting periods, no annual maximums, no claims, no pre-approvals, like all that stuff goes away. So it's exactly like as I described before, what they're looking for. And by the way, just coming back to this, we do plans for pediatric practices. We do plans for practices that focus on older populations, and these care plans change drastically based on that. And obviously, they change from a pricing perspective drastically based on the zip code of a practice and demographics of a practice. Once we implement the membership plans in different practices, we started measuring what's happening in the practices relative to the uninsured and insured patients. And again, this is straight from practice management software of a practice that implemented a membership plan. What you see at the top is they have 818 insured patients, 180 uninsured, and after they implemented the membership plan for a while, they had 299 membership plan patients. You can see the the procedures that were accepted and the procedures per patient there, and net revenue per patient. And again, this is what we see typical in a practice, where the membership plan patients act just like an insured patient. So in this example, they're doing 7.3 procedures. We're insured to 7.7, and both of them are typically about 50 to 100% higher than uninsured. And you can see that 4.7 for uninsured versus 7.3 for membership plan. And then the other comparison you always see is looking at the net revenue per patient, where insured $848, uninsured $691, and membership plan is $1116. And that's because under insured, obviously that premium is going to the insurer, not to your practice. On the membership plan, the payment goes to you. The other thing is that you're controlling the fee schedule, and so you're not having to accept 40% discounts off of your UCR. You can do a 20 or 25% discount or whatever you want to set it to. And so the net revenue per patient is quite a bit higher, even though in this case, when you think about it, the membership plan patient is taking less procedures, but their net revenue is much higher. So you're doing less work and getting more revenue. This is just a comparison of typical plans out there. So obviously the box there is around a membership plan. We have a PPO plan in here, and this is a MetLife PDP medium plan, which is a very typical plan. It's actually, I'd call on the richer side of a lot of plans of an insurance plan, and then a discount plan on the far right side here. And again, you see this very consistently. In this example, what we're showing is a patient who is sort of at the national average of 1.5 prophies a year, 1.5 standard exams, a bite wing, a problem focused exam, and a filling. And you can pick all kinds of different scenarios. We just picked that one as one sort of common scenario. And what we're showing here is what the patient would pay in that scenario under a membership plan, under the PPO, and under a discount plan, and then what you would get out of that. And so under the membership plan, obviously all those payments go to you. There's no middleman. Under the PPO and discount plans, you can see the PPO, you only get $260 net revenue. With discount plan, you only get $357. And you can see the percent of patient payments to the dentist, 100% for membership plan, 45 and 67. You got guaranteed revenue under the membership plan, once again, because that subscription payment's going to you. Under the other two, you don't get anything unless they walk in the door. And then you control the fee schedule, the plan design. There are no denial claims, there are no annual maximums, and so on and so forth. So obviously, sort of across the board, the membership plan is going to be better for you, and it's also better for the patient. I get a lot of questions about, where should I start? What type of patients should I, sort of sell the membership plan to? And the first place you want to start is your existing patient base. I know a lot of, practices want to go off and go find new patients with a membership plan, but the key thing is to start to get used to using it. Get your existing patients in, to the membership plan. They're going to come in more often. They're going to accept more treatment. You don't have to go out and spend marketing money on these patients. They're walking in your door every day, or you have a list of them if they haven't come in for a little while. But the net is focus on your existing patients, get them under the membership plan, get them going. It also enables your team to better understand the membership plan and sell it better. And then once you get those things done, and those, you see this list of existing and new uninsured patients, dormant patients, retiring baby boomers, they're all great groups to talk to. Then after you get that done, then go off and talk to new patients. And we typically tell people to go after, things like 55 plus communities, small employers who are in your area. You can go to chambers of commerce, and then maybe go after the general uninsured consumer base in your area. They're the hardest to get a hold of and to market to. They're going to be the most expensive. But we've seen success on the 55 plus communities and also small employers. So that's where I'd start on the new patient side. What are the benefits? I've talked about a number of them as we've gone through here, but just sort of to net them out. How do I think about membership plans and the benefits to your practice? The first one is just making it easier for patients to do business with your practice. Sometimes it can be hard for them to do business in a way, right? Because it's, pricing is sort of hidden from them. They don't feel like they're part of your practice. They're sort of on the outside looking in. So you give them a way to come into your practice and be a part of it, and basically take the mystery and the stress out of purchasing oral care, because now they feel like they're on the other side of the rope. They have a membership plan. They get access to discounts. They're paying a subscription and getting access to their preventive care. They feel financially savvy. This is a really important one. People want to feel savvy. They don't want to feel exposed on the outside. So what we see from a lot of patients is they just talk about this, like, I feel that I'm finally getting a deal, and I feel like, I'm finally getting, I'm on the other side of this thing. I'm not, just looking from the outside in. They'll become close to your practice, and it also makes them feel good about themselves. It's amazing when they buy a membership plan, the feeling they get of, I'm taking a nice positive step towards better oral health and my commitment to better oral health. So that is, all that makes it easier for your patients to do business with you. Next thing is, filling your hygiene schedule, increase production. You're going to, increase production if you get more people into the chair more often. And so this what we call the membership club effect. Basically, people come in more often for recall, and when they're in that chair, they accept more treatment. And also, all those hassles that are, so those unnecessary hassles that are out there with insurance go away. So not only are they coming more often, they're sort of, part of the plan. They feel like this, they're a member of your practice. But now you don't have to, dance around annual maximums or waiting periods or pre-approvals or exclusions, pre-existing conditions. Like, all of that stuff goes away, and you just have one-on-one conversation with your patient, and select the care that's needed that they agree to. And by the way, a lot of this membership club effect has been documented in other industries. And the one book I've read that I think is applicable is called The Membership Economy. And if you get a chance to take a look at that, basically those books document that patients who are part of a membership plan basically will buy about twice as much as a non-membership customer of theirs, and they're much more loyal, and they stay much longer with wherever they're buying that membership plan from. Next one, I mentioned this a number of times, taking back control and removing all those hassles of insurance and the cost of insurance. So you basically focus on care. There's no treatment protocol forced on you. There's no coordination of benefits, no reimbursement paperwork, and so on and so forth, right? All of that goes away. So right now, a lot of practices we work with, when we first start to work with them, they'll have, flyers on their desk that show, or the front desk that show, for a discount plan or insurance or, something they've been offering for years. And what you can do is get rid of those. There's no need for those anymore. Why force your patients into programs that are bad for you, right? Have them buy your membership plan versus buying a discount plan where you're forced into, crazy fees and somebody else is getting paid right up front for your work versus you. And so you just get rid of all of that and take control. Providing coverage to retiring baby boomers is another big one. We see this over and over and over again. Baby boomers want to commit to oral care. They've been doing it their whole lives. They lose insurance. They get a little bit lost. They're not sure what to do. They typically will stall on treatment and things like that. So this just is a great way to get them ramped out of insurance as they leave insurance and become retired and move into something which continues their sort of, whether the continuum of care, sort of goes on. What they like about it is they're simple to understand. They're able to maintain their oral health. It's easy to budget. So we know a lot of baby boomers retirees are on a fixed income. So that is, they want to make sure they can budget for these things. They don't want any surprises. And so ability to pay a subscription, over the course of a year or on a monthly basis is, a very, very nice thing for them. And then you can actually include specialists in your plan. So we have a lot of practices that will work with specialists that they refer their patients to and add into their membership plan as an added benefit. And obviously, baby boomers are going to use those specialists more often than other age groups. So they think that, that is a really nice benefit to have as part of the membership plan. The other benefit that is really important is, I think the stat came from the McKinsey group, but the 7 out of 10 new patients leave a practice within 12 months of their first visit. So think about new patients that walk in your door, German patients that, might come back, or emergency patients that walk in your door for the first time. How many of them are you going to retain and keep within your practice? And well, a lot of times what practices will do is once they implement a membership plan, they'll put those, special, new patient specials on the side, or they'll stop doing the Groupon thing, and they'll basically offer their membership plan as the special for these types of patients. And the whole idea is to not just have them come for that visit, but to commit to care over the next 12 months, and then obviously get them renewed. And now you got a lifelong patient as it goes along. So it's a great way to stop that revolving door that happens with a lot of new dormant and emergency patients. Best practices, again, this is sort of summarizing a lot of things I probably already talked about, but there's probably a few new things in here as well. But just we've worked with thousands of dental practices, and so we've gotten a lot of collections of best practices. And this is a net of the I think it was the top 10 here that we typically recommend to practices. So one is getting buy-in from the entire team. You want to make sure everybody's on the same page. They understand the value of the membership plan to your practice. You don't want, some people agreeing it's a good thing, and other people not agreeing. You really want everybody on the same page. And it all starts with you, the dentist, to be the person who advocates for this and supports it, and then, gets buy-in. The customization is really important as well. So we've seen plans, for example, across a group that, a group practice that, has multiple states and multiple demographics that they cover with lots of different locations, and they'll have one plan, one price, one treatment protocol. And that's just a bad idea. You really want to customize this for your practice. So each practice is going to have a little bit of different philosophy on treatment. You want to make sure it's personalized for your patients, and it's also priced based on your location. You can have drastically different prices for a membership plan based on location. We have some practices that are offered a membership plan for $220. We have others who offer it for $600. It's, all based on location and demographics of the patients that the practices are going after. So you got to make sure it's customized and personalized for your patients. Assigning a membership plan coordinator is critical. Somebody in the office, typically it's the office manager, needs to be in control and leading the effort, and just making sure everybody's been trained and prepped and has all the materials they need and can talk to it, and then is also driving goals and tracking goals and understanding performance of the membership plan. So it's really important to have somebody on point to do that. And obviously 4 goes with 3, which is that person setting goals, tracking progress. Keep these simple. To start, I'd make them weekly. So if you're going to have, let's say, 20 uninsured patients come in the door that week, your target should be, let's see if we can convert 10 of those. And then see how it went at the end of the week, what worked, what didn't work, and adjust for the next week, and set the same type of goal for the next week, and see if you can get it, improve it from, let's say you got 5 signed up, let's see if we can get 7 signed up the next week. But constantly track it and improve. Number 5, make it easy for your team to manage. We see a lot of in-house plans where people do paper-based plans just collapse on themselves because they can't track the members, they can't track payments, they can't make changes as they need to. They don't have any way for the patient to self-service themselves, so they get a lot of calls. And then number 6, automating things is sort of hand in hand with that, so it's hard to manage it. And a lot of the in-house plans, you don't have electronic payments. You got to take payment at the front desk. You don't have things like auto renewal. If a patient wants to change something in their account, whether it be a payment method or some information, they got to call you. So the 2, making it easy to manage and then automating things go hand in hand. It's really important to get that down so it's not bothering your front desk and becoming a hassle. And what we see a lot of times is once you get to about 50 members, it basically starts to collapse on itself. So really make sure you've done these things to make it easy to manage and automated it so that it doesn't become a problem down the road. Number 7, rolling out the red carpet. This gets back to that conversation I was having around things like, making it a membership plan and making it more than a transaction. We have practices that will give little gifts to patients that have bought the membership plan every time they see them. It can be just a little basket of stuff. It doesn't have to be much. We always recommend shaking their hand, thanking them for being a member, make them feel special. We really want to roll out the red carpet and make them feel like they're part of your practice. Promoting your plan is important. Obviously, you got to have materials for your office, on your website, on social media. It's got to be consistent, professional. It's got to all tie together, but make sure you're promoting it in all kinds of different places. Get support for your patients and your team. Questions are going to come up. People are going to ask things. It's not insurance, but it is, somebody's bought something, they're paying $300 or $400 for it. They're going to have questions. So you got to make sure they can get a hold of you easily, whether it be text, email, or phone, and make sure it's compliant. There's a lot of federal and state laws you got to follow. So just make sure you've done your research there and have incorporated that into your membership plan. I have a few case studies, and then which will probably take another 5 minutes or so, and then we can get to questions. So if you have any questions, it's a good time to put them up there if they're not up there yet, and then we'll get rolling on the questions once we get through these case studies. So I have 3 of them. One is a group practice. So this is a group that's called Smile Exchange. They have 6 offices and 7 dentists. They're in the Philadelphia area. They had their own membership plan that was paper-based, but they had a huge issue with renewals. So the renewal rate was 25%, and actually they didn't even know that until we went in and took a look at it and tried to figure it out. And they were having a lot of trouble with just administrating the plan, and things like when their patients would come up for renewal, they'd have to spend a lot of time and money and effort calling the patients, trying to get them to give them their payment information back again, and then renewing them. And a lot of patients weren't answer the phone, or once they got a hold of them, they say, well, I'm not going to do anything until I come into your office next, and things like that. But that is, they put it in a plan. They offer 3 care plans, one for children, one for adults, or one for peri, as I described earlier. They price their plan at $240 a year. It's really low relative to the average in the U.S., but the net is they wanted to be aggressive on the pricing on the recall, so that they would get the patients into the chair and then have them accept more treatment. You can see they offer a range of discounts from 15 to 55% on other treatment. They offer a monthly payment option. Again, you can make that decision whether you enable somebody to pay on a monthly basis or they have to pay all up front. And you see some of the other things there. But net was they added about 727 members in their first 8 months. And you can see they drove about $200,000 of recurrent subscription revenue. But just as important, if not more important, their patients who bought the membership plan accepted another $761,000 of treatment. And by the way, this hasn't been updated in a little while. There were well over 1,000 memberships now. I think they're about 1,200. But at the time we did this case study, when they're at that 727 or so patients, this is the data that we got straight from the practice management system. So like I showed before, what you're seeing here is the members are visiting just like an insured patient. You can see members 1.9, insured 1.9, uninsured about half of that. And they're accepting about the same amount of procedures as insured, which are twice the amount of procedures as uninsured. But look at the net revenue coming from those patients. You can see on the membership side, it's about $1,311, where insured is $755. And remember, the insured are actually accepting more procedures than the members. So it's pretty amazing that they get that much of an increase in net revenue, even though they're doing less work than the insured. And you can see it's way ahead of what the uninsured patients are doing. The next case study was it's Nike's Dental. They're an independent insurance-based practice. They're in Provo, Utah. 2 dentists. You can see sort of a summary of them there. They have a lot of uninsured patients. They actually have a lot of uninsured millennial patients. They happen to be in a college town, and they also have a lot of millennial families in Provo. So they actually offer 5 care plans. And the reason they do that is 3 are sort of standard plans, and they have 2 for college students. And their standard adult plan is $288 a year. So a lot of people that would seem inexpensive and sort of on the cheaper side, but Provo, Utah, it's actually a pretty good deal for the practice. They do offer a monthly payment option. You can see the results over 11 months. They sold 162 memberships. They're over 200 now. They generated about $42,000 of current subscription revenue. We haven't been able to get a hold of all of their practice management data, but they tell us these patients are accepting a lot more treatment than they did in the past. And then our last case study is a practice called Black Hawk Dental out in California. They're 100% fee for service. They were not offering a membership plan. They decided to put one in. They did the standard sort of child, adult, peri plans, but you can see their subscription is $480 a year. so almost twice the amount of the last two practices. And then they give a family discount and 20% flat discount off of all additional treatment. Patients have to pay up front. They don't offer a monthly payment option. You can see they sold 183 memberships in their first 7 months. Again, they're well ahead of this. This case study hasn't been updated in a few months, and generate about $100,000 recurrent subscription revenue. And actually, I talked to the dentist owner of this practice, and the way he looked at it, that subscription revenue basically pays his sort of fixed cost of his office, and he looks at it as everything else is gravy. So he's created an annuity basically that's paying for the electricity, and things like that within his office, and his rent and things like that. That basically everything else is sort of gravy on top of that. So it's a nice place to be. Just a quick thing, you probably already know this, but Claire, basically we provide a platform that makes this all easy, includes everything you need from an online platform to the materials you need in your office, your website, and so on and so forth. I won't go into detail, but then we sort of handle all this for practices who don't want to do it on their own. That was it for the content. What I'm going to do is go to the questions. So just give me a second here. I'm just going to pull up the questions that were posted. And then once that's done, I think I'll just hand it back to Lisa. And let me see, we got about 6 questions. So let me just go through those. So the first one is, how do practices typically price their membership plan? And this may be asking because I went into this a little bit, but I'll go through it real quick, but they might be asking what is sort of some typical pricing versus how you might price it. But the net is you want to price it based on your demographics of your practice. The average, just to give you the average in the US right now, is $345 is what we see on average across the whole US. That will vary, as I said earlier, that will vary drastically. It will vary from, like I showed, some will be $220 all the way up to $500 or $600. But the average, just as a point of reference, is $345. And then what we recommend is before you price your plan, a lot of practices haven't looked at their fees in a while, so do a fee consult. We actually provide one as part of our engagement, but if you're going to do this, go take a look at all your fees, make sure they're sort of up to date, and then you can sort of work it from there. Next question is, I like the monthly payment option, but I worry patients will cancel after they receive treatment. There's one there. There's actually 2 here relative to that. Does it make sense to offer monthly payment options for the plan? So here's the net on monthly payments. If you do them right, it actually works out fine. So, for example, on our platform, our payment failure rate for monthly payments is only 1.5%. And that's because we have a bunch of checks and balances to make sure that works out properly. And we don't have any issues with bad credit on the system. So on the monthly side, what's important is to understand your demographics. So millennials, when given a choice between annual and monthly payments, will almost always select the monthly payments. They're used to it. They grew up with it. They're fine with subscription models. The older your population gets of your patients, the less valuable a monthly payment option is. So when given the option, we see 55 plus patients, actually, if they could select monthly or annual, they will pick annual for the most part. About 70% of them pick annual payments, even given the option of monthly. So again, if you have millennial patients, it's going to be important to offer the monthly option, but don't think everybody's going to pick it. Actually, you're going to see it, the selection of it varies by demographic. And then if you put a lot, some checks and balances into how you set payments, it won't be an issue. That payment, the failure of payment issue won't exist. Here's the next question. How do you find out about state laws, regulations, requirements? The only thing I can say is you just need to do a review. And actually, I don't have it all in front of me, but let me just give you an idea of some things you need to review. This is not going to be an exhaustive list. If you want to, you can reach out to me. I have my email there. We can try to, talk to you about some of the details within your state. But the first thing you got to realize is there are some federal laws that apply to membership plans. Things like HIPAA, so they have to be HIPAA compliant. There's FTC regulations. There's consumer privacy laws, for example, and consumer protection laws. So, for example, you have to give the patient 45 days notice prior to a renewal happening. You have to give them a plan document that explains all the details of the plan. You have to give them a 30-day money-back guarantee. if within the first 30 days of purchasing it, if they have not used any benefits on the plan. And there's a list of things. There's probably 30 or 40 things like that. They got to make sure embedded inside the membership plan. Then the other part is the state laws, and there's state dentistry laws, there's state insurance laws, there's state discount plan laws. So it's not a simple answer. I can't just give you the list and say, here, look at this. What we did actually, as we set up Clear, is we hired 3 law firms who went through all those regulations and built compliance into the system. And as for yourselves, if you're going to go do this on your own, all I can say is just, you're probably going to need an attorney to go look at it. But anyway, you can reach out to me and I can give you some ideas of how to sort of, work through some of that. I saw some other things here. Let's see, one other one was on legal issues. Another one is, I already have a membership plan, but I find it hard for patients or to get patients to renew. Sort of how do you handle that? So that's a good one. We do see that as an issue a lot of times when people do these on their own. So I mentioned that one practice, Smile Exchange, their renewal is 25%. Don't be surprised if that is that can be a renewal rate if you don't have automatic renewal happening. So the net is you really want to automate the renewal process. You don't want to have to call the patient and recollect their payment information and get them to sign off on it again. So when you first sign them up, what you really want to do is get them to agree to an auto renewal. Now you got to give them an opt-out option, over the course of the 12 months that they're going to be in the membership plan. But the net is get them to agree up front to an auto renewal. They're used to that. We don't see any pushback on that. And the people who don't want to do it will opt out. They'll uncheck the box. But short of that, it becomes a big hassle to try to sort of manage and track it, and then call and get those patients to renew. So really make sure you can automate that prior to doing your membership plan. Let me see, I probably have time for one more question. Let me see what's here. Then one here was, why wouldn't I just do a membership plan in-house instead of using a third party? And you probably got a sense for some of this. I mean, you can. There's nothing stopping anybody from doing it on their own. It just takes a little time, takes some effort to set up the plan. You may or may not have experience with these, so understanding how to design the care plan, how to promote it, how to price and all that stuff. You might have to do a lot of digging and talking to people and trying to figure that out. The area that becomes what I see as the issue is the experience the patient has and the experience your team has. That is a big differentiator between sort of in-house plans and third party. So what is the patient experience of signing up and managing their plan and getting all those the things they need to get in order to manage the plan as they sort of move along through the year. Some people will just sign them up with a piece of paper and they leave the office, but those patients would like something. They'd like to walk out with something and have some reference point to the membership plan. And then your team, just their ability to manage the plan, understand who's on it, who's coming up for renewal, what benefits do they buy, and just, where's the payment, associated with that membership plan. Just make it easy for your team to have a good experience. And the last piece is, and we already went through this with that last question, is on the compliance side, is just making sure it's compliant and have done your homework. So just think about all those things and make sure, you sort of have those things covered and you feel comfortable that you can create a good experience for your team, for your patients, and you sort of have all the, management and then the compliance piece nailed down. And obviously it needs to be a well-designed plan as well. So that's it. I think I'm out of time. Thank you for joining me tonight. You can see my email up there. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm happy to respond to you. And otherwise, I'll hand it over to Lisa.